Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to GCPA Live. Tonight, we have the cast of Carrie, who is here to talk to us about telling that wonderful story. But first, as we have been doing the past couple of weeks, we have Marquise Powell, who is with us tonight to talk about his business and another Black business that is here in town. So, Marquise, how you doing? You're still muted, bud.
I'm doing well. How you doing today, Paul?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for asking.
Okay, go ahead.
Good. No, I was just going to say, who are you going to highlight for us tonight?
I'm going to highlight a business, Pharaoh's Donuts. Do you enjoy his donuts?
I do enjoy the donut. Yes.
Okay. So this business is kind of weird because this is like a really big business in the St. Louis area. They've been open for a while. Like, I am going to go back to the origin story, but Armand, the owner, started in 1995. So this is like, this is a heavyweight, so to speak. I don't know, like a more established business. Okay. Now, what I would like to say is that, okay, if you guys don't know me, my name is Marquise Powell. I'm the owner of Direct Black, Black-owned business directory in St. Louis. So you guys look for Black businesses, you guys can go to my website, directblack.com. The business I'm going to highlight today is Pharaoh Donuts. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about their origin story. Their origin story is kind of similar to most people's origin stories. So the owner, Armand, woke up one day and was like, and it was early in the morning, he was like, I'm really craving a donut. 1995. So he really didn't find places that satisfy his craving for a donut. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to try and make a donut. So it took him a minute. He thought he knew what he was doing. So he tried it out. Then he went back and did some research and tried it out again. And then he was kind of perfecting his donut, so to speak. He gave it to some friends. And they tried it out. And then he started selling his donut. Now, this is the most interesting thing to me. He didn't go like, I'm going to open up a donut stand and start selling my donuts, without my first mind went. He started selling his donuts to gas stations across St. Louis. So a lot of gas stations had Pharaoh's Donuts in there. So he would prepare them at home, and then, he would prepare them at home or prepare them where you prepare them, and then give them to the gas stations. He did it all across St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois is included. What I like to say is that he did that for a while, like for a decent amount of time. Like in the early 2000s, 2001-ish, he's opened his store. And by this point, he already had a donut that was really successful. He knew his pops was well, and it boomed really big. That's when he opened his downtown location, the first one. He moved several times. He's still in downtown location today, like downtown area, so to speak. Now, when he perfected his donut and he opened his business, business has been booming ever since, and they have been expanding their industry. One example of that is, have you had World Fair? Have you had Pharaoh's Donuts by chance, Paul?
I haven't had Pharaoh's Donuts. However, what you're talking about makes me want to go out and get some.
Have you ever had World's Fair's Donuts?
I have had a World's Fair donut, yes.
You may have had a Pharaoh's Donuts. For a period of time, Pharaoh's was, for a while now, they've been making the donuts for World's Fair for a decent period of time. So most people may have had a Pharaoh's donut without knowing they had a Pharaoh's donuts, because like really where they really get their juice from is like distributing donuts. I think it's very interesting, distributing these donuts. But as I was talking to them, I was like, wow, I didn't know you guys made donuts for World's Fair Donuts. And he also did share with us that during the time of making the donuts for World's Fair Donuts, in this recent years, the owner, she decided to step back, and she was going to sell out the business. So she's going to sell out. Pharaoh's thought they were going to sell to her or to him, but they ended up selling it to Strange Donuts. Strange Donuts was like, okay, we just want to preserve a St. Louis business. We're going to keep the recipe the same, and everything's going to be gravy. But guess who has the recipe? I was like, oh my gosh, but this happened earlier this year. So Pharaoh's have the recipe for the donuts. So they have now been seeing influx of customers coming to them and buying donuts from them recently. They have a downtown location. Their downtown location is It's newer, so they are in process of fixing up. What I like to say is that they're also working on a satellite location as well. And they're also working on a satellite location, which they're gonna like basically treat like they did with World's Fairs, bring their donuts in and sell from that spot as well. What I like to say is that their hours are 6 to 3 weekdays and weekends is 7 to 2. Their COVID restrictions is the dining room is closed, no face mask, and their drinking station, the fountain drinks are closed as well. If you would like to support this business, you definitely can. I would encourage you guys to. It's definitely a heavyweight. They've been open for 25 years and some change. Well, 26 years. 26 years. So now, it's like, wow, because they really started in 1994, but most people credit them as 1995. What I would like to say is that I'm definitely going to put a link in the chat so you guys can check them out. I don't know. You got any other questions about Pharaoh Donuts? Or
what's your favorite donut? If I'm going to go to Pharaoh's this weekend, tell me which one I should get.
Okay, good question. Now, Pharaoh's, when he made a signature donut, I want to say that he says, it's his donut when you can see a skunk line, which is like the little line around the donut. So it's like it shows that the donut has risen during the process of cooking. A donut I would say to get. The blueberry cake donut is something I'll get. You ask them, they said they definitely sell glazed donuts, like so many glazed donuts they sell out. And then a news reporter, because they're also on the news, they're on Fox 2 or KMOV, and the news reporters both said they like apple fritters. So.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like what you're saying is when you go, you're not going to want to just get one.
Right.
You want to get a half dozen or a dozen, take it home, and have a sampling.
Yes, exactly. Okay, guys, if you guys want to look at any more Black businesses or find more Black businesses in your area, go to directblack.com. And if you have any questions about Direct Black or any business on the site, feel free to reach out to us through the site, and we'll happy to help you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much. As always, it's a pleasure seeing you and having you on. And thanks for taking some time with us, and have a great night.
You as well.
Thanks. All right. So, and I don't know about you, but I'm ready for dessert. So Pharaoh's Donuts, I think we've got a whole bunch of people that are going to come and get some donuts from you this weekend. So let's go ahead and move forward now and talk about Carrie. So tonight we have 7 of our actors from the Carrie cast with us. And first with us is Molly.
Hey.
Hey there, Molly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for asking. So Molly, you played one of the interrogators as well as an ensemble track, and you understudied Sue in Carrie. So tell us what you're up to these days.
I am about to be a senior at Kirkwood High School, and most things are canceled, but I'm sticking with summer as much as possible. It's been pretty good. Yeah.
Good. And like everybody, trying to find something that's safe but still fun to do.
Yeah. So lots of picnics, little distance moments, things like that.
Absolutely. Well, Molly, thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight. Look forward to hearing some of your stories from Carrie tonight. So next up, we have Audrey.
Hi.
Hey, Audrey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am well. So Audrey, you played Norma, and what is it that you're up to these days?
I'm honestly just preparing for college next year at Texas Christian University. So.
All right, TCU. There you go. And what are you going to be studying when you go to college?
Musical theater.
All right, excellent. So Audrey, thanks again for spending some time with us here tonight. We look forward to hearing some of your stories from Carrie. Next up, we have Zach.
Hello.
Hey, Zach, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. So Zach, you played Billy. And what are you doing these days?
I am going into my senior year at Missouri State University, and I'm majoring in English education. I have a minor in theater. So that's taking up most of my time these days.
I would say so, entering your senior year.
Oh, yeah.
So Zach, it's so great to see you. Great to have you here. And we look forward to hearing your stories tonight.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Of course. Next up, we have Caroline Eiseman.
Hi.
Hey, Caroline, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Oh, fantastic, thanks. So, Caroline, you played Chris, and what is it that you're doing these days?
Well, I'm about to move back to Nashville as I enter my junior year at Belmont University. I'm receiving a BFA in musical theater with a double minor in dance and corporate communications.
All right, so, you got nothing going on during the semester.
No way.
Oh, Caroline, it's wonderful to have you here tonight. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, and we look forward to hearing your stories. Next up, we have Kylie.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. So, Kylie, you played Sue.
Did.
And what is it that you're doing these days?
I'm working a lot.
Yeah?
I just got a job at Starbucks, so I'm working there until I can get into a college.
All right.
Currently, I am being eaten alive by a puppy.
There's the puppy.
I'm not very happy that I'm not paying attention to her.
And what's your puppy's name?
Ruby.
Ruby. I'm sure that Stephanie is in the back, going absolutely bonkers.
Yep. Hi, Stephanie.
Starbucks and puppies, two of her favorite things.
Yep.
Well, Kylie, we are so excited to have you here tonight. Thanks so much for being here. We look forward to hearing your stories.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Caroline Santiago Turner.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. You played Margaret.
I did.
And what are you doing these days?
I'm going into my junior year at Indiana University in Bloomington, and I am pursuing musical theater. And then I'm also pursuing arts management and considering adding on sociology.
Because you weren't busy enough to begin with, right?
No, I needed more, clearly.
Oh, well, Caroline, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for spending some time tonight, and we look forward to hearing some of your stories about Carrie.
Happy to be here.
And last but certainly not least, we have Carrie herself, Hazel.
Hello.
Hello, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic, thanks. So Hazel, what is it that you're up to these days?
So I'm getting ready to head back to Texas for my junior year of college, studying nursing. Good times.
And before we talked, you were talking a little bit about some of the nuances of the nursing program, and so that's always a fun thing to be thinking about during a COVID pandemic. And
Yes, definitely different than what you think when you go in, but still excited to go into it. Definitely makes you see a different side of things.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Hazel, for spending some time with us tonight, and we look forward to hearing your stories.
Of course.
So Stephanie, let's go ahead and bring everybody out. It's like we're gonna play Hollywood Squares now. Can I have Zach in the middle? All right, so let's start by talking with Molly and Kylie. So Molly, you played the interrogator. You also understudied Sue, and so both of your tracks really fell together in the fact that this version of the musical is set up in a way that the story itself is a flashback. That's told by Sue to the interrogators, where the interrogation is sprinkled throughout the story. So talk to us about what it was like weaving in and out of the story through this plot device.
Yeah, it's definitely a really interesting setup, and I think it really lends itself to making the story that much more interesting and sort of not interactive, but like the audience is kind of there with you the entire time from the beginning. And I think that, as you said, kind of having both of those tracks, learning both of those was really interesting because I could like run lines, but then it's like running lines with myself. So I'd always be in those scenes, like trying to make sure like I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, make sure I stay in where I am at that moment. So whether it's in the actual show or whether it's an understudy run, just to make sure I know what's going on. And then I think the sort of like revolving nature of the show, how it starts and kind of weaves throughout and ends the same, I think it sort of helps to illustrate the point that while the themes of Carrie, like about bullying and being kind to those around you, I think that it sort of teaches how much that happens like every day all over the place. Like the audience I'm sure can relate to being any one of these characters and any one of their points in their lives. And it really makes it that much more relatable and that much more sort of modern and applicable to everybody's daily lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Kylie.
Hello. It was definitely a fun time to like see. So while watching the understudy runs, because I didn't watch the show, obviously, it was cool to see like the transition into being a flashback into being the story. And I definitely think that it was, like Molly said, nice to like see the story as like you could be any one of the characters.
Yeah,
I'm being eaten, and I put her away.
Bye, Ruby. So Molly, you had mentioned the fact that the story starts and ends with the exact same line. So Kylie, you did this over and over and over again. What did you make of that device where the exact same line begins and ends the story?
Can you explain a little bit more?
Because you've slept once or twice since we produced the musical.
So it's been a hot minute.
Yeah. So we start with the interrogators asking Sue for her name. Name, please. And so the story starts with the interrogation, and then we go into and at the very end, of the epilogue, before the last chord, we cut out of the epilogue. There's a silence in the music, and the interrogator says, "Name, please." So the very same line that we hear to start the show ends the show. So what did you make of that convention in regards to the way that they bookended the story?
So in regards to Sue and like Sue's story, it definitely was like showing how she's relived this over and over again in her mind. And I think that it's also showing the world that like this doesn't stop, and like the bullying and all of this doesn't stop, even though you want it to stop. It's always like a constant thing that's going to happen. And it's just showing the viewers and people who watch though, like, hey, this isn't going to stop unless we like do something about it.
Yeah, and that's a really important point to bring up, is that that bullying continues to cycle unless we do something to break that cycle. And it's so important for us to recognize what those markers are that can allow us to recognize, hey, we're starting to go down this path and we need to stop. So thinking about because Carrie clearly has a very strong theme around bullying, and Caroline, Audrey, Zach, your characters were the primary instigators of the bullying towards Carrie. So talk to us about how you went about creating that atmosphere while also balancing the insecurities of the characters that you played.
I know for me, I had listened to the score of Carrie again and again and again before the show started. And it wasn't until I looked at the script that I realized the people who wrote the show did a wonderful job in giving these mean people a backstory and a reason they were mean. And it doesn't excuse the meanness, but it gives them some humanity. And for me, that was a super important thing to remember, is the bullying in our world is such a cycle. And you never know what causes someone to be so horrible to another person. I know Chris especially had some of that in her world, in her life. And for me, that was a really interesting thing to look at and experience while I was trying to create that character, is why is she doing this? And how horrible does it make her? Because that's what the bullying in our world is caused by. It's by other people. It is just a trickle. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as we did the show and created these characters, is how much we affect the lives of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. There we are at the party at Chris's house.
I personally, with Billy, was kind of a weird role for me to play, because when I was going through like junior high and even some in high school, I definitely dealt on the other end, on the Carrie end of being bullied. And, you know, a lot of the people that I was bullied by were Billies in the world. And so when we were going into it, it was definitely hard for me to see the vulnerability in that, because in my mind for so many years I had villainized that kind of person. So it was definitely a really hard place to access, kind of completely flipping my own mindset on it. And I think one thing I always try to remember, kind of what Caroline mentioned, is the cyclical nature of bullying, in that most people who are bullies have been bullied in some way, shape, or form. So just kind of trying to draw on that like, you know, meanness doesn't just come from nowhere. It usually comes from a place of hurt and a place of loss. So I use my own experiences as kind of my own backstory for why this character was so mean, and so spewing vitriol at Carrie. So it was definitely a hard place to get to, but getting there was very good for my own like self-realization in things I had done in my life that maybe I didn't realize were bullying, but for other people probably felt that way. So it was a good learning process, definitely.
Yeah.
Love it.
I remember the first time that we rehearsed, or like that you blocked the first bullying bathroom scene, when we were all yelling at Hazel and throwing stuff at her. And I was like, I was doing it, but I was like inside, I was mortified. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe that like this has happened. And oh my goodness, I remember that I was just like, as a person, not in the character, I was just like, oh my God, I was like shaking. I was like, this is crazy. So, but kind of like Caroline said, how the writers just really helped create a backstory for each character, which was really cool. I feel like Norma, they added so many like little like bits and pieces for her to enter in different scenes. So it was like really cool to kind of discover her that way. But I think the biggest thing that helped me create this very toxic environment for Carrie was actually just the like with cast members. We had a very loving cast. I mean, but what I mean is just like it, how one person can lead to one other, and then it can just like snowball in the effect, and how as a person and these characters are constantly thinking about other people and like how they want to be viewed by other people. I think just like being around like a cast with like full of those kinds of characters really helped facilitate like, again, that toxic mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am really happy that you brought up the fact that this cast, everyone cared about everyone else, and so what the story that we were telling on stage wasn't trickling into the relationships, but we were using that in order to learn, as you all have just talked about our own relationships with individuals, and what does that look like, particularly through the lens of when we've got a toxic relationship, through a bullying lens. So the core one of the core relationships that we see primarily throughout the story is, of course, with Margaret and with Carrie. And for those who are unfamiliar with Carrie, Margaret is Carrie's mother. And so Caroline and Hazel, that relationship was very tumultuous. So tell us about how you worked through the process to find the nuances that created the layers to that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more that we got into the rehearsal process, the more that we kind of talked about, at least in my experience, of why Margaret is the way that she is, and that, like everyone else is talking about, like, mean people aren't just mean for no reason. So really diving into the hurt that she had experienced and the shame from how she conceived Carrie was really a driving factor for all of her interactions with her daughter and the overprotectiveness. So it was definitely hard at first to tap into that as like a teenager, just because I totally sympathize with Carrie, you know, with having to deal with her mom. But I think, yeah, the further we went along with kind of diving into our respective characters, the more I think we had kind of that opposition going to allow for that kind of relationship to play out.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I still remember the reactions that you all had when we were blocking that scene. That was a difficult scene to work on. Do you remember, particularly in where Margaret says you're burning in that song? Do you remember creating those moments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an intense day.
Tell us about it, Hazel.
I just remember leaving the room like feeling hot with emotions because I was like so overcome with emotion, because I feel like that was the day that we really hit the nail on the head with discovering the characters and discovering like why Margaret was the way she was and like really digging deep. And I think that was when, you know, the relationship kind of made sense to me the most. So yeah, and I also agree with Caroline, like creating that relationship when she like dug more into who Margaret was as a person, that helped me understand too, and helped me as Carrie like develop my character more and like dig into that, because without knowing, you know, how she felt about conceiving me, I wouldn't have probably felt as bad about being Carrie as I did. So
yeah, and that, you know, that understanding it from a child's perspective, you know, what mom, why is it that, you know, that you feel this way about this or that, or particularly around, you know, how I came to be, that can really shed some light for the child around, okay, I understand you more because you've shared more about yourself with you. With me as the child, and that was something that Margaret didn't do too much. It was just sprinkled throughout in little doses, and I think that the time that she shared actually the most was at the end of Act 1, but at that point it was almost too late, because Carrie was already at a point where she recognized what her power was, and she was done listening to mom. So Carrie isn't Carrie, of course, without a bucket of blood. So we've got to talk about the blood. So I want to start with Hazel, and then I want you all to share about your experience with the scene that included the blood drop and the destruction, because each one of you in a different way was affected by the creation of and the execution of that scene. So Hazel, talk to us about the blood drop, the destruction.
Oh, so the blood, definitely an experience. A very sticky, interesting
Mess, but fun. Definitely fun. Definitely something that's good to say that you experienced. So it tasted like chocolate because it was partly made of chocolate. So that's like a benefit of getting it dumped on you. The first time, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared of having a 10-gallon bucket of blood dumped on my head or like slipping. But I definitely think it was one of the coolest effects I've ever seen in a show actually work. Because I think without it, the show wouldn't have been what it was. I mean, it would have been still an amazing, incredible show, but I think that actually having that and like having that in the destruction scene amplified it times 10. I just think it was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and we went through a lot of blood testing to make sure that we got that right.
Yeah, I remember the first night of tech, I think we dropped it. The first time we dropped it, completely missed my head. And then we did it again and kind of got it. And then you were like, okay, Hazel, go take a shower. So I was like, all right, awesome, we're done. And then I had showered, and then you guys were like, you know what? Okay, we're going to try it one more time. So just come back. And I was like, okay. Yeah, definitely still had like some blood behind the ears at the end of that every night, but it's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There's probably still some, if we're being honest.
Well, I can tell you that every time we go back into that theater, we did as great a job as we could possibly try to do, and there's still remnants of blood up on the cat.
Oh my god.
So I will apologize several years later for asking you to come back and do it again. I do want to share that part of it was that because we were troubleshooting, we had an idea as you were showering that we wanted to see whether or not it would help fix. And even that didn't fix it. So ultimately, for everyone who's interested in the tech elements of something like this, what we had was a giant syringe that actually held 3 quarts of liquid. And what we ultimately ended up having to do was put a makeshift shower head on the end of the elbow that the syringe would push the blood out of. Because with just the elbow itself, it was hitting the edge of the elbow and then splashing in a way that we couldn't control. And so Jim Robert and Laura Skraska, they tag teamed and figured out that a shower head was going to do what we needed to do in order to make sure to hit you every night. And it worked.
Yeah, I was a little nervous, not gonna lie. Every single night I was like, is this gonna work?
Well, we were still nervous about that too, and so we built in a backup plan. So Audrey, you were actually part of the backup plan. Tell us about your role in the blood drop.
I really wish I could remember the backup plan. I remember you gave me a little packet and you were like very seriously looking at me. You know the way that Paul does? He looks at you with this in like a tiny packet of blood and he was like, you have to like give this to her if like immediately it doesn't start flowing. And like I was staring at her, like I remember. And then also I was in charge of if the doors didn't slam shut, I had to like shut them or something or like pull a string. I don't know. But anyway, so that was like the backup blood plan, like little blood packets, I think. I think Caroline used that for Margaret. I'm not sure.
Yes, that was another element, was making the heart bursting more authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tip. Mm-hmm. But I remember one night after the destruction scene, when Hazel was walking out of like the gymnasium or whatever, she stepped over me because like I was in the way or something. I probably was. I always and the dress just like completely like wiped all over me. And I was so sticky and covered in blood and I felt it was sorry. It was, no, you're fine. But I remember I was like, I am covered in blood. This is, I mean, I didn't even get half of what you got, but I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who remember, and I do, I could play this in like a movie in my head every day, because let's face it, I probably do, because this was a very cool moment. When the blood was dropped on Hazel's head, the blood pack, Audrey, that you gave her, we had her adjust her blocking to smack her head so that we could get rid of that blood pack regardless of whether or not the blood hit her. And so that created the reaction of, oh my goodness, I've gotten blood dumped on my head, but also practically we were able to get blood onto her no matter what. And so that was and I still, nobody else saw it, but I always looked for it. I always saw how discreet you were. Audrey, you did such a great job of very discreetly handing that off to her so that nobody knew what was going on.
Did I hand it off to you when I was like crowning? I crowned you, right? Or like I put a little thing? Okay, I think
you put it behind my back. I think I like had my hand behind my back and you set it there, like you put it in the crown maybe.
Okay, yeah, I think so.
What?
So, yeah.
What happened? Like I said, I play this like a movie. So after Audrey, after you put the crown on her, after you put the shawl on her, what you did was you took her hand and congratulated her. And when you took her hand was when you dropped the blood pack in her hand. So Caroline and Zach, you had a fun little time at the end of the destruction. You want to tell us about that?
Zach and I were in the blood the whole show. I feel like we never got out of the blood. At the top of Act 1, we were putting it on each other's faces and lifting it into the air. And then during all of prom, we were up on the cat and we came in and out of the light. And we were just doing our thing. And then the lights shut out and we ran down the spiral staircase and laid in the blood. And, we got through all of it. And we were like, oh, we avoided it all. And then I came out every day, just all over my costume. And I was like, this is it. But it was like one of my favorite parts of the show. I mean, you can't do Carrie and not get bloody.
Yeah, I really personally had a great time doing it. I remember the bucket that we like strung up during Night We'll Never Forget, the Act 2 opener, like the what's that called? The football little like thingies that we put on our face. And then, like our choreography, we were supposed to like put our hands up and like smack it down. And when I did that, I would like wipe blood into my hands and then just like slather it all over my face and my chest. And I was actually telling Caroline earlier that I had a blood like a hashtag blood selfie I took every night. And it was like my Twitter profile picture for months. I'm sure everyone I met at college my freshman year was like, is this kid crazy? Because I literally just had a picture of me in blood. But yeah, it was like, I mean, it was obviously very physically demanding, that last song, because we were just throwing our bodies around, with Carrie controlling us, just throwing our bodies around into blood, out of blood, around blood. So it was a fun time.
So Stephanie, put that picture up that you had just a moment ago. Do you remember what happened in the very next moment here?
Oh, you mean the neck crack?
The neck.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that.
I have a video of it still to this day of us in rehearsal, trying it for the first time. That was so good.
Yeah, I definitely the first time we did it like popped my neck because I wasn't really being smart about how I was doing it. It was fine, like it didn't hurt or anything, but I definitely remember like doing it like very not smartly, and definitely popped my neck and learned the correct way to do it. So yeah, I definitely remember it though.
Yeah, that was one of Lori's favorite moments of the show, was when Carrie snapped your necks and you dropped down. So Molly, you didn't necessarily get to wallow around in the blood during the destruction scene, but there was some pretty intricate choreography that was going on. Talk to us about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the day we sort of put it together in the studio. The whole ensemble would be in, at one point, Carrie we're all in different places, like dancing at prom, obviously, and then the lights shut off and everybody's freaking out, but then Carrie or Hazel would like pull her hands up and pull everybody into the middle, and we all form this like kind of big circle around her. And that's when sort of the choreography would start, where Carrie's controlling everybody. So like simultaneously, we'd all have to drop to our knees and then flip over and drop to the ground, like all at the same time. And it was definitely, as Zach was saying, definitely very physically demanding show. But I mean, I remember one time Peter, who played Mr. Stevens, came in one day and he was like, "Today I came prepared." And he's holding like a bag of knee pads, which is like, honestly, he knew what to do, because I mean, definitely had some bruises after this show. Probably should have gotten my own knee pads, but yeah, it was just, I mean, that choreography was crazy. And like we were talking about earlier, all the tech, like, you know, we had fog machines and there was red flashing lights all the time, and it definitely played up the crazy drama of that scene and made it all the more like haunting, I would say.
Kylie and Caroline, you weren't on stage during that, but you got to watch it during tech, and were preparing for the next scene during the show. What was that scene like for you, just to observe it?
I mean, personally, one of my favorite parts of the show was listening to Hazel sing "The Destruction" from backstage. That was like, I was like, yes, girl, get it, when she would hit those notes. Okay. No, that was like absolutely one of my favorite parts of the show. But other than that, I think I was really just wanting to hear audience reactions. You know, in that black box, we're so close when we're backstage, like we're so close to those seats. So sometimes you would hear like audible gasps. And my mom definitely contributed to that later on, as we'll talk about. So
probably my favorite story from Carrie is that story right there. So I'm looking forward to hearing that here. Kylie, how about you? What was that scene like for you from your perspective?
The only thing that I can remember really is like from watching it during rehearsals, I thought that was like really cool. But during like rehearsals and shows when I didn't get to watch it, all I remember is going from backstage, like getting kicked off the stage and then running all the way around to get ready for the next moment. So yeah, I didn't get to see it very often, but I did. It was really cool.
You know, you had a really thoughtful director who said, you know what, you're going to sprint between this entrance and that exit. Sorry about that. So immediately following,
I got my exercise.
There you go, right? So immediately following the destruction, we come into the scene where Margaret and Carrie have their final confrontation. So Caroline, Hazel, Kylie, you were all part of this scene. Tell us about creating that scene and the impact that it had on you, as well as the impact that you were able to hear and feel from your audience.
Hazel, do you want to start?
It looks like she does.
Okay, sure. Definitely a heavy scene. It was hard to do at first because, you know, pretending to get stabbed by your mom and die on stage, not the easiest thing to portray. But definitely, especially coming in from the prom, like devastated from what has happened, pretty, you know, drawing on lots of vulnerability, and then the stabbing, you know, going from a lot of different emotions. So hard scene to close with. Definitely a lot of audience reactions, as Caroline will fill you in on. But yeah, my friends cried because of just how sad and horrible the ending is, but it definitely shows you the meaning of the story.
Yeah. I mean, hi, Marshall. I think, it was helpful to have the last, I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong. It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure the last moment that Margaret's on stage before the finale is for her solo When There's No One. And at that point, she had already decided that she would need to sacrifice Carrie, believing that she was a witch. So there was that whole song to kind of, for her to prepare for the sadness of it, of losing her child, because in her mind, that was like the only way, I guess. But yeah, so it was helpful to have that to kind of deal with the sadness of it and the loneliness that she would experience. And I think really in the end, I mean, there was so much going on because it's like she sees her daughter and she's heartbroken because she's like crying and there's that motherly instinct, but she just squashes it down and she's like, I got to do what I got to do. I got to do the Lord's will. So I think she was ultimately just pretty determined. So I think the more that I tapped into like the determination of like making it just bigger than it was, of just like defeating the devil, the less I thought about a mother killing her child, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that's exactly where Margaret was in that moment, because it was very much not about Margaret killing her daughter. It was Margaret defeating the devil,
right?
In order to move forward. And so talk to us about that moment where you pull out the knife and the reaction we heard from the audience on opening night.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure. I mean, I remember the situation a little bit vaguely at this point, but I'm pretty sure I knew. I mean, obviously, I wasn't like looking into the audience, but it's pretty easy to tell where your folks are in such a small space. So I knew that my mom was like right in front of me. She would get a full view of this moment. So I'm pretty sure it's quiet, and then I pull out the knife and I hear, "Oh my God," from like right in front of me. And I see like, I see like her little program, like shield her eyes. Cause she had never even seen the movie. She was too scared. So it was, it was pretty audible. I don't know if you have any more recollection of that moment.
What was so cool about that moment from a director's perspective and looking at, an audience's reaction, because it was dead silent in the room. Because Margaret in silence is pulling out the knife as she is finishing this lullaby and raising it up, and as you raise it up is when, oh my God. and the thing is, the entire audience was with her. And that's what's so cool about moments like that is when the entire audience is hanging on that next moment, and you get one person that audibilizes it, and nobody bats an eye because they're all right there with them. And that's part of the thing that's exciting about live theater.
Absolutely.
And particularly, like you mentioned, in the black box, the audience is right there. And shortly after this moment where Margaret stabs Carrie and Carrie is lying on the floor, Carrie then uses her powers one more time to kill Mom. So Hazel, talk to us about that moment where Carrie turns on, really it's her self-defense. And
Yeah, this part was like it's really sad because I feel like in this last scene, Carrie going home to her mom and being comforted by her was like the one time Carrie actually felt in the whole musical like her mom was accepting her and being like, you know what, you're my baby, I love you, I'm here for you. And she felt comfortable and let her guard down. And the one person in that moment she felt like she could trust turned on her. And in that moment, it's just like, I don't have anyone. This is it. Like humanity flipped off. And it was like, and it was just like, it's over.
Yeah. And, you know, and hopping Margaret's heart, Margaret dies, and then Sue comes running in. So Kylie, talk about that moment where you've come in, you see the carnage in front of you. What's going through Sue's head? What's going through your head as an actor in this moment of the story?
So I think that for Sue, when she first walks in and sees this, she's first off in shock because like not necessarily what you expect to see when you walk into somebody's house. But after like processing it for a minute, I think that she feels extremely sad for Carrie and guilty also because she feels like it's partially her fault that this has happened because she's been a bully in the past. And she wanted so desperately to help Carrie feel more included and accepted. And for her, it just felt like it was nothing. Like all of what she did was like destroyed with Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guilt just like kind of washed over her.
Yeah. And in that moment, as that guilt washes over her, we have the transition into the epilogue as you're holding Carrie's now lifeless body and essentially laying her to rest. And the ensemble comes in for the epilogue. So Molly, Caroline, Audrey, Zach, what was the impact of that finale for you and the connection that you had with the audience in that number?
Well, I can say, from what I remember, based on my blocking in that particular scene, I believe Caroline and I were like dead, like front center, right, like not even, we were not social distancing because that was not a thing yet. We were right in front of whoever was sitting right there. And it was very difficult because it's a very emotional number. And we're basically like, for those of you watching who like saw the show or are familiar with it, we're basically like preaching the message of like, what does it cost to be kind to the audience? Is kind of like a watch yourself, don't be like bullies. And it was really hard because we're like making eye contact with these people and we're talking to them, but we're not talking to them at the same time. So it was a really difficult line to toe, especially I am someone who I love to make eye contact with people, but not always. So it was like very awkward at times. I believe one of the nights, like my grandparents were sitting like right there. So kind of being able to like impart that message on people and stay serious in that moment where you're like this close to them was definitely difficult. But like I said, that message of like, what does it cost to be kind, which like, you know, literal words in the show, was really impactful. And I know my parents personally, when they came to see it, you know, they commented on like how powerful that last scene was, having us all kind of go all the way around the perimeter of the stage, and kind of looking right at the audience and telling them what the message was really powerful for them, at least.
I think for me, the most exciting part about the show was the way our stage was set and being in that 3/4 thrust The preparation for the show made me very nervous. I was so nervous to share this show with an audience and to be that person in a setting that I wasn't Caroline. But seeing how close the audience was to us and how much this story was about them and not us, not even our characters, it was about the universal message we were telling, that made the show that much more important and exciting to do every night. And that made the epilogue and the opening number exciting and fresh and like gut-wrenching all at the same time, because we saw how many people were looking us in the eye and realizing what we were telling them. And that was the most exciting thing to do every night, was be a one-on-one storyteller to each person sitting in that audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Audrey, Molly?
I think that, yeah, definitely what Caroline and Zach mentioned was super impactful in that moment, especially the line that we were talking about, what does it cost to be kind? And I believe that, like Zach was saying, we're all around the perimeter of the stage. Everybody's facing an audience member like directly in front of them. And I believe that was when, if I remember correctly, you probably know this, Paul, when all the lights came up and it was like, there's no ignoring that moment and no ignoring that message. And I think that it made it really sort of stark and clear to the audience that what happened. And then I think from then on, something that we talked about earlier was sort of the way that the show becomes like a cycle, and to the point where the whole ensemble goes back to where they started the show, and we're totally walking backwards off the stage. And I think as I mentioned earlier, that sort of speaks to how much this is a cycle, and bullying is something that happens every day and everywhere. And I think that sort of illustrates that point as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally don't know what to say anymore because everyone said like everything that was in my head. I think kind of like what Molly said, just how like the opening number and that like last song like completely reflected each other, which I thought was like really cool. Kind of like how there's a start and then there's an end, and also how we literally the whole cast was just staring at Sue and Hazel, and I think Margaret too, or Sue, Carrie and Margaret, and just kind of like seeing what we created, and just again like how that snowball effect and how like every action is like a reaction, and then like from that reaction you like cause like another action, which like it bounces back and forth and like creates again this weird snowball effect.
Yeah, it did.
So, yeah, I hope that made sense.
And ultimately, like you all have shared so eloquently, it's really about what do we take away from the story? What's the lesson that we learn by seeing this all play out? Early in our conversation, many of you mentioned that the fact that we can recognize ourselves in just about all of the characters in a little different way, and taking that understanding, taking that recognition, and what am I going to do with it in order to break the cycle and help someone who, when we see they're being bullied, or maybe see something that might cause a bullying opportunity and prevent it from happening, in order to make that positive change, so that we don't have to look at, Audrey, as you mentioned, we're all looking at Sue and Carrie and Margaret here, that we don't have to look at that carnage as we move forward. So I've kind of guided some of the moments of the story here so far in regards to our conversation, but I wanted to ask you, what were some of the things that stood out for you that were maybe most impactful, or just favorite moments or memories that you had from the process?
Personally, I loved our sits probe a lot. I mean, for a contemporary score, it's like once you get those drums, it's just like a game changer, and it makes it much more, I don't know, like just you can feel it instead of just hearing it. You can just feel it from the tips of your toes all the way to the top of your head. which I think helped give us all the energy to get that show done.
I think the thing that comes up the most when I remember this show is how safe I felt around everybody in the cast and crew. We were dealing with things that high schoolers don't deal with in theater. Like it was a big show for St. Louis to do for high schoolers. And I know Caroline and Hazel and I went to school together, and we were about to be seniors. And that's a time in your life where you are like so overwhelmed with emotion. And I felt like every person in the room constantly wanted us to feel like we were valid and we were learning and we were growing through our performance. And I mean, I was all up on Zach the whole show, and he made all of that so safe and facilitated a place where it was okay for me to say, I don't think I want to do that, or let's do it again and let's do it more. So it was a great learning experience for how how you should feel in a workplace, and what is okay to experiment, and what is okay to try more, and what is okay to say no, and which is another important message of the show.
Personally, when we were doing the show, I think was the only person who had just graduated that year in 2017. So like literally the night we closed the show, I went home, fell asleep, and woke up the next morning at 4 a.m. to move into college. So it was like a very tumultuous time for me, kind of on the flip side of like being a senior, but like being done with senior year and going into college, especially as someone who's an education major. The show definitely made a really big impact on me when it comes to recognizing smaller signs of bullying. You know, like it's not all, as it was in the show, throwing feminine hygiene products on a character. It's not always just like those big things. It's a lot of smaller things. So getting to experience that at that time in my life where I was in such a change, like in a place of flux, was really, really important as I went into my freshman year of college. And I really appreciated that. I also obviously, like, as a lot of people have touched on so far this evening, the bonds that we had in our cast, I think for me, are some of the strongest I've ever felt in any show I've been in since, you know, in the last 15 years I've been doing theater. And I know, like, personally, there are people in this cast I still talk to this day to check in and see. So those bonds were really special. I know, like, we had a lot of fun inside jokes. We had a lot of really fun moments together. So just kind of seeing how a show that deals with like really traumatic events and really people that aren't friends, and how that created such strong bonds talking about those serious issues, is a favorite moment, just like a favorite memory in general for me.
I think that something that stood out to me about this show and this rehearsal process was how flexible the creative team was in sort of letting us guide the story, because it's something that was so like applicable to us as, I mean, a group of high schoolers. Like, this is a setting that we're in every day and some things that we can absolutely relate to. And I just remember, like, the first scene in the show, I believe, besides the interrogation at the beginning, was when all of the girls are in the locker room or gym class with Carrie, and like the first like big bullying moment. But I just remember there was one rehearsal day we had where everybody kept bringing up these crazy suggestions where we were like, oh, well, what if we start throwing the props at her and like stick one on their head? And then everybody was like, or somebody said like, oh, what if we like record like as you would in normal high school and then post it on the GCPA Snapchat? And we would just, every time someone would bring up a suggestion, we'd all be like, oh, haha, funny. And then Paul would be like, oh yeah, let's do it. And I think that was something that sort of let us guide where the show went and really helped us to connect to the moments in it, because it was like something that we can totally relate to. And yeah, I really like that about it.
Yes, we do technically still have a Snapchat. Probably hasn't been active since about Carrie, but
yeah, I still have the videos on my phone from like rehearsal processes of like, yeah, it always comes up as a memory and I'm just like, oh my God, that happened. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I think it was really fun because like Norma always had her phone on during the show. Like she always had her phone with her. I think that was kind of like part of the cyberbullying aspect of how like everything can just be like sent in an instant. So I thought that was kind of cool, like a cool aspect that Paul added, because I don't think that that was like really a thing in the previous shows. One thing that I really loved about Carrie was the choreography. I thought that was just like really fun, and it just reflected so well with like, or like it complemented the music so well, and like each character, it like brought out different personalities and like flavors, and also kind of what kind of what Zach said, just like being so close to the audience to see the reactions and just trying to like connect. It's like you encourage us to like make eye contact, and again like kind of like make them feel like they're a part of the story as well. Yeah, I just really appreciated that.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to share before we sign off here tonight? No? I mean, we've covered quite a bit of ground. With as long as we've been on right now, we've done Act 1. So so right about now, Carrie is slamming the windows shut and telling Mom, I'm not going to eat my dessert. So there it is. I still remember working with Jim on that moment. So Jim Robert, who did our sound for the show, that was a moment where he was first of all so impressed with your storytelling, because that was the first time that Jim had worked with us, and he was so impressed with the storytelling that he said, I'm always wanting to make sure that my work is as perfect as it can be in regards to timing. He said, but with this, I can't miss. I have to make sure that it lands, because it becomes that much more impactful. And so, you know, that's the impact that you all had, even on the staff that joined us, you know, our technical crew that joined us during tech. And of course, Jim has been with us ever since. So we're very excited about that. But gang, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you here again tonight. As we always do when we close out one of these live events, we like to ask, you know, why is it that you believe that students should come and take classes or audition for shows at GCPA?
I think to kind of bounce off of something that Caroline was saying earlier, is that even though, you know, we're a youth community theater company, and, you know, youth community theater, it's like, you know, is it just for fun, blah, blah, blah. But I really just think that the professionalism that was present in every rehearsal, I mean, from day one, I mean, Carrie was my first GCPA show, and I felt that I learned a lot about the rehearsal process and you know, working with new people, and there are some lessons that I took in the process of Carrie that I will take with me as I enter the professional world. Even if you don't go into theater, just I think the values that GCPA really espouses, like just treating your castmates and your crew with respect and kindness, and always showing up with a positive attitude, ready to go, is something that everyone can benefit from.
Thank you.
I agree. I think the community at GCPA is unparalleled. I think that like there's a really special environment there that leads to a lot of growth in all of the people that come through the doors. I know like myself as a performer grew a ton since being at GCPA, and I don't think I would have seen that type of growth if I hadn't been at GCPA. And then I just love how like much GCPA is willing to push the boundaries and take risks with their shows. Like Carrie, Spring Awakening, shows like Violet, you know, most companies aren't willing to take such risks with doing shows like those. And I think it's special that a youth theater company is willing to say, we're going to do this. We're going to talk about this subject matter with our kids because it's important, because it needs to be talked about, because it needs to be taught.
Carrie was the only GCPA show I got to do, unfortunately. And despite that, I have this family in GCPA that I have felt welcomed back every time I reach out, every time I say hello. There is a GCPA alum that is going to my school next year, and we were never in a show together, but I reached out to her earlier in the summer and was able to create this connection with her and talk to her about our school and give her tips and learn from her about what coming in as a freshman was looking like, because we had this mutual love for a place like GCPA. And I think that that's one of the greatest things you can get, is a family and a community that is unconditional, and you can go back whenever you need it.
Yeah, I really agree with basically everything everyone said so far. One personal thing about GCPA that I really love is Carrie would have been my first and only show with GCPA because, like I said, I was a graduating senior. And for years, literally years, I had always wanted to audition, always wanted to take classes. And I was like, this is my opportunity. I'm going to do it. And I did it. And it actually opened up the opportunity for me to return for Crazy for You the next spring, which was really just like special that I was able to like rejoin the GCPA family not even a year later, and kind of get to relive that experience again. And kind of, you know, what everyone else has said, the connections to some of the people that I've met have been, like Hazel mentioned, unparalleled to pretty much anywhere else. You know, like Audrey, for example, I got to work with her again last summer, which was such a fun experience. When I did Crazy for You again, I know like a lot of people from Carrie came to see it or were in it, and just having that experience of just always kind of feeling welcome with these people is so special. Especially a young person who may not have friends outside of theater, you know, just knowing that I always have people to count on that will be for me, like be there for me. And every time I come to see GCPA show, seeing Paul, Lori, and Stephanie, and always getting a warm greeting and a great conversation with them is just, you know, something that you don't get everywhere. And I think, and obviously the artistic training is like top notch. So it's also a really great thing as well.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what a lot of people are bringing up. The people and the relationships you make at GCPA are just unmatched. And I mean, GCPA has given me my best friends, and even they will always be there to support you. The casting meet and the creative team will be there to help you, to even correct you. Like, they're just it's such an incredible place to be. And like Zach was mentioning, the artistic training is great too. And it's so great to be able to have both of those components, and so that you're learning and growing as a performer, but also as a person, and you're finding people who are going to be there for you no matter what.
I would say for me, I absolutely love just being surrounded by a ton of people who wanted to learn more and to grow in the musical theater community. And it was just really incredible, especially because, like, for a lot of people, it is really fun for them to be a part of these shows, and it really like offers themselves and like other people like chances to learn and grow. But if you're wanting to go into musical theater, anything performance based or music or anything, it's like such an incredible community because again, the like you learn so much, and again, you're just surrounded by people who are so focused and like showing up, and you want to be like them, you want to be with them, and like I don't know, it's just such a just a good community. I keep saying that, but it's true.
I've always said this about GCPA, and I will continue to say it every day of my life. GCPA is a home for anybody who walks through the door. And it's always going to be a safe space for new people and people coming back years later And I adore that from the instructors. Everybody just makes it such a safe place, which is always nice to have.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Kylie, GCPA will always be a home for you, regardless of whether you're still in school, you've graduated, you're in the next chapter of your lives. Wherever you are, you're always part of GCPA, and we're excited to have you be a part of our family, and get that opportunity to walk down memory lane and talk about some really great experiences that we've had. Hi, Lacey. So Hazel, Molly, Zach, Caroline, Audrey, Kylie, Caroline, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight, sharing some stories. It's always wonderful to see you. And everybody that was watching at home, thanks so much for spending some time with us. This is going to be our last live stream for a little bit, as we are getting ready for our fall programming and our annual fundraiser, Raise the Curtain, which is on September 12th. Make sure to grab your tickets and join us. It's going to be a virtual event this year, but we would love to see you virtually as we celebrate our 7th anniversary. September 12th, Raise the Curtain. Gang, thanks so much for joining us, and everybody at home, have a great night.